we're already in it, but let me just give an introduction. My name is Binky Griptite. Welcome to The Groove Within. Today, I have the great fortune to interview someone that I've been watching for a long time. During my formative years, I've been fortunate enough to kind of sort of share the stage with him and become acquainted with him. Without further ado, bass legend and session master Will Lee.
Hey, thanks, Binky.
Thank you, Will.
And I appreciate your help
getting
me here today.
Yeah, right. I had I was able to help him in a few feet with his bag. Got out of the cab with a gig bag and a suitcase, which you've done many times, right?
Plenty, yeah.
You've gotten out of a lot of cabs with your gig bag.
At this address, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, right. We're at the Bitter End in New York, in the Village, legendary club, the scene of many a crime. You said earlier, many a great record, some great live records. And first of all, in my introduction, Will Lee is like such a great guy. He brought candy for everybody. So this is an atomic fireball.
I like candy.
I was a candy kid. I had a really good sugar affection for sugar. I won't say addiction, but I ate a lot of sugar so today is a candy day though. I've been off the candy for a while. But
are you saying you had a confection affection?
Basically? I had a affection for the confections.
Oh my God. I know I know all about what that is.
Yeah. It's fun, the sugar. Depending on how you feel about ASMR, this is either great or really awful. But we're going to table that. But no, so back in the day, this is your reputation. If you're not familiar with Will Lee, you're more familiar with, well, if you're watching this, you're familiar with Will Lee. But you ought to be. You played a million sessions from starting when?
Early 70s for sure.
Here in New York.
New York was a place where you could actually, if you got in with a few people that were doing sessions and they started to recommend you for something, it was possible to get into like almost a whirlwind of doing sessions all day long. Yeah.
And are you born and raised here?
No, I'm from Texas originally.
Okay. Well, you came here after school or something? I know some of your history, but.
My father was a music educator and was the dean of University of Miami Music School. Mm-hmm. So we had moved from Texas about 6 years before I came to this fine village this quaint little village known as New York City.
Yeah, a little quiet seaside town.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice so when you talk about getting in with the people that do sessions, like how do you get in?
Oh, boy. Pure luck and also a little bit of smarts holding on to it, because actually when I was in town and I started to do a couple sessions, which I never thought was going to be ever possible, when I saw what the session scene was, I said, I get it. That's not going to be happening for me. Yeah. I'm going to go back to Miami and just start back where I left off. Yeah. Yeah. When the band that I was with broke up, by the way. I came here to join a band called Dreams. Okay. Billy Cobham, the Brecker Brothers, etc.
Oh, right. Okay. And so that was like a functioning band, like everybody interacting as a band, as like members and somewhat equals and whatever.
Yeah, and that was the only reason I came to New York.
Yeah.
Audition, luckily got the gig. Yeah. Because I was a huge fan. I knew all their music, and they weren't ready for that, I don't think. So that was... when that started to break up and fall apart, which started basically, I think, when Billy Cobham left to go do Mahavishnu Orchestra. Yeah. And that was the beginning of us trying to keep it going, but couldn't in the same way we were accustomed to.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, how old are you in 72?
72, I'm 18, 19.
Okay. Yeah. I was 6.
Well, happy birthday to you.
Yeah, right. But then, and you came here with skills, like already like trained, you could read, and like you got.
Yeah, I was getting there. Yeah. Yeah, I was in the middle of developing those, and I still am. Yeah, really.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I was aiming towards though, like as far as like getting in with, because I've moved to different cities a couple of times now, and I know that like getting in with a new group of people is like it's part skills, but it's part hang too. Like you gotta like, because it's like if you're gonna have somebody on a 2-hour gig, you still gotta deal with them for the before and after. So like like how is it to like, because and the show is called The Groove Within. So I'm just trying to I want to stress the groove. I mean, because people must have liked your groove when they started playing with you.
The groove was there. I mean, I had an experience playing mostly with drummers that weren't at the level of Billy Cobham before I came to town.
Yeah.
So I was used to almost being the timekeeper in the band often.
Yeah.
You know, that more often than not.
We're going to talk about more of that later.
Okay. So I found it really easy to meld and to mesh with various drummers. And you were thrown, you know, all flavor of drummers.
Yeah.
Because everybody's so different, you know.
Yeah.
And their groove is something that you have to learn how to psych out. So
Yeah.
I was pretty good with that. So my groove, even though it was based on somebody else's groove, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it was a thing that I could sort of find and help define just by my flexibility within that drummer to drummer thing.
Yeah, so that must have been a great joy, like being used to holding it down for some drummers that maybe have a looser conception of time.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden you're playing with somebody that also has great time, and you're having great time together. You're having a great time together. But no, yeah, like everybody's like playing, and like you don't have to keep the drummer in line. It's like you're like actually staying in time with the drummer. And like you're in time with each other.
That type of drummer that you just described, the latter one, is the kind of drummer that really makes it easy for you to be creative with and find a part. Because your part almost comes sometimes like instantly and automatically.
Yeah.
Because their thing is so comfortable that you can either not play a downbeat.
Yeah.
Or you can play the downbeat with his kick because you know where it's going to be.
Yeah.
Or you can play, you know, leave as much space or as little space as you want, and it's all going to feel good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking about a session that we did, I'm Every Woman with Shaka Khan.
Thank you. We were talking about that earlier.
And just how we were given a chord chart, but when Steve Ferroni started laying down the groove, the part just kind of played itself to the point where Arif Mardin, the producer-arranger, actually wrote some string parts based on some of the bass things that I came up with.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's funny, I was mentioning to Chris earlier that I almost had the opportunity to play that bass line on stage on the Colbert show, because with the Dap Kings we were on the show with Batiste that week, and Valerie Simpson was going to come on and do that song. Yeah. And our bass player from the Dap Kings, Gabriel Roth, who is a great bass player, but that's not really in his wheelhouse. He kind of cuts off around like 74, and like, you know, after he doesn't want to play anything after 7. And so like, yeah, I can play that bass line. And then in looking at, like, I had never looked at the credits because I knew it was a New York session, you know, the original Shaka Khan version of I'm Every Woman. I knew it was a New York session, but you know, I just thought it would be like Marcus Miller or something like that. And I looked it up and it's like Will Lee. It's like, oh, I know that guy. But at any rate, Valerie was ill that week and I never got a chance to play it.
Oh, you will.
Yeah, but I spent a lot of time learning it, and you killed it. It's a great bass line.
Valerie stays really active, so she loves to play and sing.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to perform with her on another occasion, and it was great.
She's a true professional's professional.
Yeah. Oh, she was great. We had to play Ain't No Mountain High Enough. That was this same gig I was telling you about earlier, a Jazz Foundation gig. But anyway, she just walked on stage and started playing. It was like no rehearsals. It's like Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Like, if you don't know the song, just sit out, because she had it on piano. It's like she didn't need it. Right. She didn't need anybody else to play with it.
It's all there, right?
So she doesn't care if you play or not. Like, if you don't know the song, just don't play. But she was just such a pro. She's like, I got this.
She carried the whole band, right?
Yeah. But let me ask you about that session. So when you go on to do I'm Every Woman, was there a chord chart or was there a bass line?
Just chord chart.
Yeah. So you laid down a pretty simple bass line, but super effective, and you know, part of what makes that song iconic. I mean, talk about that. Like when you walk into a session, it's like that, and all you have is a chord chart, and you have a lot of leeway to like where should the bass go.
I was having a lot of fun, and I still am, and I always have had a lot of fun trying to make the bass not just be a bass sometimes.
Yeah.
Even though my favorite bass sound of all of every bass sound is the sound of the car going by.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's what I go for most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also am fascinated by pedals that make the bass not sound like a bass. You know, that take it to another place. And at the time, I was experimenting with, whatever there was around. And most what there was there was a huge variety of sounds available coming to us from the Electro-Harmonics company.
Yeah.
Mike Matthews and those guys were just making pedals. In his description, they were making pedals for the weekend musician. So in other words, they were making pedals that different pedals that did a lot of different things, but were super affordable.
Yeah.
Compared to like bigger name pedal companies that were
Yeah.
making stuff. So they had a lot of variations, and I was trying everything. I was into flangers and chorus pedals and.
And what year was that record done?
I don't know.
I'm Every Woman. It's like late 70s, like. Was it early 80s?
Maybe. I don't really know.
Okay, sorry, but back to
my father was great with those things.
Yeah, I know, right?
On November 9th, 1972.
But so you're into Electro-Harmonics pedals.
And beyond and whatever else,
Yeah.
So I was always messing around with different kinds of sounds. And that particular session, I think I was, for the I'm Every Woman thing, I think I was looking into trying to do something that was a bit swimmy, but also maybe even stereophonic, maybe even something that, really kind of was mesmerizing for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just that day, that moment,
Yeah.
that day. So I plugged into something that was kind of a double chorus, bi-chorus type of thing, maybe. Oh, I know what it was. I think it was the MXR was making rack-mounted. They had a blue-face thing that was actually, I think it was a digital delay of theirs.
Okay.
But it did a lot of other stuff, too.
Like,
So
would that have been like something that
just swim,
Yeah, like something that you would have brought with you, or the studio had it?
Yeah, for sure.
You
It's
had your
part
own.
of my.
Okay. Yeah.
And back then,
I see. Yeah, you're well equipped here. You're not as scared of pedals still.
I love pedals.
Yeah.
I'm a pedal kind of guy.
Yeah.
Kind of a bassist. But anyway, they had cartage back in those days, so you could the sky was the limit. You could think of I want to bring this huge rig, and I want to bring these pedals and this many basses, and
you just call Artie.
And the truck would pull up.
Yeah.
Now, Uber is my cartage guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we hit on that earlier. You've been in and out of a lot of cabs. There was the thing I remember reading, something probably in Guitar Player magazine or some musician magazine in the early 80s or something. And they were talking about the amount of money that you would spend per year in cabs, just going from studio to studio, doing different sessions.
What did they say? How would I know? How would they know?
That it was a lot. I don't know. I guess maybe they were just speculating that you just spent so much time bouncing from studio to studio, all day doing.
There was a lot of cabbing.
Yeah.
A lot of cabbing, and it wasn't necessarily because things were so far away. A lot of it had to do with trying to get there on time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because everything's pretty close together in New York,
Yeah.
unlike L.A. for example, or even Nashville.
Yeah, true.
A lot of other places where studios are more spread out.
Yeah, there used to be a lot of studios in Times Square. Now
Right in Midtown. Yeah,
now there's
right
still
up
a
there.
few. Some of the big ones are still there.
And I was doing a lot of sessions singing too at that time. And there was more than once that I left my bass in the trunk of the cab.
Really. So
receipts are a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So
say in
when it
those
comes to
days,
that.
before, maybe before you started working a day job with Letterman, what was your typical session day like?
Well, let's say generally speaking, there'd be a 10 to 11 with a possible 20. And then there'd be a 12 to 2 with a possible 20. And then there'd be a 5 to 8, and then maybe a 10 to 1 or something.
Yeah.
And the later ones, the longer later ones were always record dates.
Yeah.
The early stuff always were commercials, jingles, and those things.
Yeah. And that's how many days a week is your life like that then?
I would say 7.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, not the jingle stuff. That was more weekday stuff.
Sure, yeah. Yeah. But just in the studio, just making records.
Yeah, but I loved playing live too, so there was a lot of that stuff going on too.
Yeah. So how much touring were you doing in that time of your life?
Almost none.
Yeah. Just
I was going to say earlier about something that you brought up. Part of this sort of I'll say it now, secret of keeping the studio world career going.
Yeah.
A lot of it had to do with me realizing how I got in there in the first place. And it was usually because somebody else was not available.
Yeah.
No matter how big that person was, they needed a bass part on such and such a session.
Yeah.
If that person was out of town, they'd have to get a replacement. And
Yeah.
that replacement was the person that was just getting their foot in the door, saying,
Mm-hmm.
and even if they weren't, even if they were really established, if they weren't available, they'd have to get replaced.
Yeah.
So I was on tour with Bette Midler.
Mm-hmm.
Her first, I remember this. Her first. I had a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
I was young and I was excited so excited about the studio thing. I couldn't believe I was even part of it.
Yeah.
So there were many times where we'd be on her first national tour. I would take a flight into New York City just to grab that session that I was called for, so it didn't feel like I was out of town, and I
Yeah.
would get right back on the road to make the gig that night
Yeah.
in whatever part of the country it was.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
But it was effective.
Yeah. And if you're watching this and you don't know why, I'll tell you why. It's because people will call the last person that they called.
Yeah.
And
if
like,
they did good.
yeah. And like, so yeah, you miss a
I
gig.
could have sucked also. And
Yeah,
would
you
have
know.
been a waste of time.
Yeah. Like, but if I miss a gig and then they call you, you cover for me, it's like, they're just going to call you again that next time. And yeah, so you're saying that's how you got in.
It has a lot of things at play. I mean, you were required to read a lot more back then too.
Yeah.
Especially on those quick sessions where they had a quick turnaround and they wanted you to like nail it right away.
Yeah.
And a lot of times where people would be telling jokes and stuff, I'd be the guy filling in the ledger lines.
Yeah.
That's very funny. And it's kinda
Yeah, it's like they want you to be able to just like hit it on the first take, kind of.
oh yeah, great immediately.
Yeah, it's like with a record, somebody might want to do 10 takes, but like on a commercial, they're not trying to do 10 takes for a commercial.
No, they don't have time.
No, just like
Yeah, tape was expensive, and studio time wasn't cheap either.
yeah, definitely. So so you're saying that you don't, maybe bass is your only instrument, but you are also a vocalist. And you've been on gigs where you're only a vocalist and not a bass player. Have you ever been on stage as a vocalist without a bass?
A few times. Yeah.
Yeah. What's that like?
You got to do your homework.
Yeah.
I'm not great with memorizing lyrics, so if I'm gonna really challenge myself to know the lyrics, that requires a lot of homework time for me.
Yeah. It definitely does. As opposed to like, yeah, you've spent so many hours with your instrument and your hands, and like you can kind of sort of do it in your. At least there's a point where I can kind of do it, and it's like when you're walking down the street, you don't have to think about every step you're taking. You have that kind of natural.
I'm jealous of people. I've known people who can look at a chart once and photograph it forever. But for me, once I have to look at the chart, it's a crutch for the rest of my life.
Really?
So, yeah.
Really?
There's way two different, extreme schools on that.
Yeah, I believe that. I'm mostly by ear. I like.
Yeah. If you can do that, you sort of got it forever, right?
Yeah. I'm that guitar player that freezes. I'm the guy that turns down when you put the sheet music in front of me.
That's the famous joke, right?
Yeah, that's it. How do you make a guitar player turn down?
How do you make the piano player turn down? Take his chart away.
Yeah, exactly, right? But I play the best rests in the business.
Ooh, that's, space is the final frontier, ladies
I will
and gentlemen.
shut the fuck up, man. Not right now, though. But let's talk about the role of the bass player. We hit on that a little bit before. And like the experience of playing with, maybe a drummer whose rhythm or time is a little bit loose, and then you feel the responsibility to hold it down. Like that's not uncommon with a lot of traditional jazz. Like the upright player is playing like eighth notes or sometimes 16th, whatever, quarter notes or eighth notes, and then other people get to sort of float around that, and it's common for the bass to be the center in some of that. Yeah,
especially jazz.
Yeah,
because when you think about, what I call jazz, and I don't want to sound like a purist, but
no, do it.
When we talk about like bebop kind of jazz, where there's the whole ensemble thing and everybody's listening and leaving space and playing off of each other. The bass was the boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
and the kick drum was barely ever touched except for an accent. Right?
Exactly.
So that's that gorgeous floaty time thing.
Yeah,
where the bass is doing that thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but then like, get into the funk world and the funk era, we're used to backbeats.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's weird, and I experience this, a lot as a rhythm guitar player, because many times I'm playing eighth notes or even 16th notes on my rhythm. And if I'm faced with a drummer that doesn't have some sort of a grid, at least for the one and two, just like for the two and the four.
What do I do?
Right, yeah. And and even as a bass player, I've experienced that where it's you're partially kind of holding the time down because like other people aren't.
Well, you can't be that I've found that I couldn't be that insistent about it. What I would have to do more than that would be able to like psych out and anticipate that next bass drum hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that would result in going back in the control room after you've sweated bullets to try to make this thing groove, and everybody go, "Wow, it feels so good," and then having no idea what you had to go through to make that comment possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
But you can do it. You can do it.
Well, yeah. Now
tight is tight.
Yeah.
Even if it's floaty tight.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. As long as the whole, because sometimes when these things happen, and you're in the moment and you're playing it, like we're really sensitive about microseconds. I know that like I only hear mistakes when I play, or like I only hear the things that like, oh, that was behind, that was ahead. But sometimes you step back.
So you're talking my language, man.
But then you listen
All
back
the
to
way.
it, especially if you take a little bit of time off of it, and then you listen back to it and just like, oh yeah, that didn't sound that bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
fix it in the mix.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and these days everything is fixable, unfortunately.
Well, you know what I mean. It's also your part doesn't necessarily. I mean, it can stay exactly as you played it, and everybody else's can too. But it doesn't have to be placed in that prominent place that sticks out like a sore thumb.
Exactly.
As not matching whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
So there's that. There's a lot of workarounds.
Yeah, exactly.
Not even necessarily moving closer or farther from the grid.
Yeah.
Keeping it as played.
Yeah.
Just don't feature it.
Yeah.
If it's not the real,
Yeah.
the greatest thing in the world.
Right. Well, let me ask you this, and I could be way off base. I don't know, but like I figure, okay, you're in the studios all day, every day. It's your job, and it's a great job.
Do what you want to do.
Right. It's a great job that you asked for, but jobs are jobs, and like we all get bored with our jobs, right? And so, if your job is like to play some of these songs that some of them you like more than others, how do you find the balance, or do you find yourself having to find a balance between sort of keeping it simple and effective, but then also doing enough to keep yourself amused and interested, but like not letting that get in the way? Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's always a challenge, man. I mean, first of all, part of the excitement of going into the studio is the fear.
Mm-hmm.
And the fear can be used to your advantage or to your disadvantage. You can use
Right.
it to energize you into getting it right in a way that, that you're not ashamed of what you've done.
Yeah.
And by getting it right, I think what I mean is something that you've left the studio with something that can be enjoyed at another time.
Yeah.
In other words, I keep coming back to this phrase that a groove is a groove is a groove, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And once it feels good, it's going to feel good forever. So
Yeah.
So what you probably should try to stay away from is having the kind of fear that makes you so nervous thinking about, oh, this is for all time. And,
Yeah.
I had a conversation
That's
with
crippling.
Verdine White about this.
Yeah.
How he talked about when the red light came on.
Verdine
talked
White,
about,
bassist of Earth, Wind, and Fire, in case
oh,
you didn't
yes.
know. Another bass legend, rock star.
We were talking about, he was 18 when they were making these amazing records, and they're in
Yeah.
the studio and he's just in there and going, where am I,
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they're about to put down some classical music for the rest of us for the rest
Right.
of the time.
Yeah.
And if you start getting into all that, you could blow the whole thing.
Yeah.
But if you're really looking just to enjoy yourself, if you can find a way to you're going to sabotage the whole thing if you go down that road of fear with the red lights on and, oh my
Right.
God, this is forever, and all that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Versus well, how can we make this feel good right now?
Yeah.
Because if you do that, it's going to feel good
Yeah.
for the rest of history.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, when I just talk about myself for a little while. When I first started playing, like I said, when I'm maybe like 10 or 12 years younger than you. So I grew up watching, you guys on David Letterman, The World's Most Dangerous Band, Will Lee, Steve Jordan, Hiram Bullock, then Sid McGuinness, and of course led by Paul Schaefer, and later Felicia Collins and
Anton, of course.
Anton Fig, of course, yeah. But anyway, in the early days, and on late night, I watched that show religiously, and I guess I was already playing guitar, and I just like, I was fascinated with New York and just New York musicians, and just, I mean, you guys were just obviously so good, but not showing off. I mean, you just were a band playing together, and you only had like 15 seconds at a time or something. Sometimes you'd get a whole song. Or
We were all about intros and outros.
yeah, that's it. That's the gig, right?
Yeah.
But every once in a while, you'd get to back someone that would perform. That was like the original concept of the band, was that the house band would just like back singers and artists.
Yeah, that was a different time.
Yeah, they don't like to do that now. It's like it doesn't happen very often. But yeah, I just loved the way you guys always just sort of laid down the groove. It's like
Hold on a second. You're talking about me again, aren't you?
I am talking
Let's
about
get
you.
back to you.
Well, no, I'm
you.
talking about I'm talking about like how I came to be here, even because, like I said, at that time in my life, I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's not exactly a music town, but between Saturday Night Live and late night and everything, it's like it made New York pretty fucking attractive.
Yeah, man.
And
I know what you mean. That's
yeah.
exciting because cats are really playing.
Yeah, and it was just like,
They're not fixing their
yeah.
parts. They're just playing.
Yeah, and just I'll pat myself on the back. I was just like watching TV. It's like I want to be on stage with those guys, and now I've had that opportunity. Now here on stage with you, you submitting to my interrogation, and I've been able to play with Steve one or two times, and that's great. But that's what I'm saying. It's like it's really inspiring. Even like from a producer standpoint, the music is just like some background shit. But there are musicians all over the world that are like thirsty to see musicians on TV playing real music, even for 15 seconds at a time. Because we could tell that you guys.
And it's a lesson. It's a
Yeah.
great lesson, and it's a great something to internalize too, because you can feel it. And
Yeah.
you know what good music feels like, and your body knows what that is, and that allows you to know whether what you're playing is right or wrong too.
Right.
Does
yeah.
this feel good?
Yeah.
Well, how do I know?
Yeah.
Because I've been there.
Yeah.
As a listener.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go back to talking about. I'm going to bring this all around. I'm doing so good at staying on track. But we're running out of time. But the point that I was trying to make is that that's Chris, our producer. He was supposed to be the interviewer, but then he fired himself, and now
He
I'm
doesn't
the
want to edit. That's all.
I'm good at this talking. But I don't know. Maybe I should just thank you, because like when I was young, I was really into just like playing sort of for myself and trying to impress other guitar players with like, look at my hot licks. But
I'm sure you have.
yeah, I went through
many.
that. I went through that early stage in my life and career or whatever. But eventually, after watching guys like you and your cohorts, I learned that it's just so much better to just like sit back and play something that everybody can enjoy later, instead of just like getting my rocks off.
Listen, man, I have to tell you something. This is something that blows me away, because I just came to this conclusion a couple days ago for some reason, even though I should have thought about it a long time ago.
Yeah.
I got super sparked into my career when the Beatles showed up on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Mm-hmm.
And many people's careers got sparked by that.
Yeah.
And I I've heard Bruce Springsteen say it, Chrissy Hynde, I think Billy Joel, a lot of people have said that was the moment that made me decide that I was going to do what I do.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what my story is.
Yeah.
I'd had a drum kit that my dad bought me.
Yeah.
A little thing that didn't even have a hi-hat. It was just, like a cymbal and a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really energized into doing anything with it, because I didn't have a sort of a goal. But when I saw that thing happen live on the Ed Sullivan Theater stage that night, that's when I became Mr. Drums, right?
Yeah.
Which was my first instrument.
Yeah.
And it just occurred to me recently that I've heard that from a lot of people who have seen me on the Ed Sullivan stage, and it just blew my mind. It's like, wow, that is like some full circle shit. You know?
TV is crazy.
Yeah, but it's that same stage. That's what's so eerie about this.
But that's like, I mean, there's so many lessons there. It's like it's a small world. Dreams
so in
are
other words, I
attainable.
guess dig and be dug.
That's
You
it.
know what I
That's
mean?
it. Dig and be dug. Pass it on.
Yeah.
You know, like leave some good recordings, and hopefully they'll say good things about us when we're gone.
Anything's possible as long as you're alive.
Yeah. You want to play a little bass? Give me a bass lesson.
Yeah, there's a little bass, but I'd like to play a larger bass.
Play your bass. I'm gonna play my bass.
All right.
As best as I can. Maybe it was in the Keith Richards book or something, but he mentioned that Bill Wyman played fretless bass on like all their early shit.
Amazing.
And like, you know, I mean, I was into fretless before that because actually Sting made a good impression on me, just like playing fretless and not fucking around, you know. Because it's like, I like a little, like I'm not really an electric jazz person. I'm not the hugest Jocko fan. There's a few Jocko bass lines I like, but I never really got into the whole thing. And I feel like,
You know about Stanley Sheldon, right?
no.
Peter Frampton's guy?
No.
He played on all, why don't you show me the way? Oh, that's live stuff and everything?
Yeah.
Fretless.
Really? I mean, I've seen
Never slides.
I've seen the videos. I didn't notice the fretless. Maybe
He never slid anywhere.
really. Yeah, no, I'm totally down with that.
Amazing.
Yeah.